Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is the one and only Mr. Dickin from Neuqua Valley High School. Go Wildcats. In this video, I'm going to show you guys how to use your calculator, whether it's TI-84 or TI-83, to take a big list of data, to sort it, and then create a histogram. These steps are going to be coming from page 12 in your packet, so if you're a little bit stuck, there are some screenshots and some step-by-steps. But I'm going to give you kind of like the video tutorial in case you're having trouble finding some of these buttons. So this page is telling us to steal some data from a previous example we've already seen in class, and that was when we were talking about pulse rates. We had 24 different students, and we had their pulse rate. We had to go through and figure out the bin width or the class width using 8 bins or 8 classes. As we went through and did that, we found that our bin width should have been 10. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys how to enter this data into your calculator, how to sort it so it's smallest to biggest, easier to read, and then from there how to get a histogram out of this thing. So let me pull up a calculator. Here we go. First thing you guys are going to want to do is input the data. So to put in our data, we're going to press stat right here next to our left arrow. So I'm going to click stat. Option 1 is edit. So I'm going to click edit. From here, you'll see I have L1, L2, L3, so on and so on. I want to put every single data entry into L1. Now, as I'm going down, you'll see that it has little index numbers here, and that tells me what number I'm on. So right now, 47 is the 19th entry in this list. Now, let's say I wanted to put this thing in order. I'm going to go back to my stats options, and I'm going to click Sort A. Now, once I hit enter, I have to tell it which list I want to submit and sort. So I can either hit second and then go into my stat option, and you'll see above it, it's lists. So that'll tell me the different lists that I have to sort. Or if I look down here right above the 1, I'm seeing L1. And well, that's where I put all my data. So I'm going to go ahead and select L1. So what this is saying right now is I need to sort starting basically at the smallest value, alphabetically, if you will, my list 1 values. I'm going to click enter, and it says it's done. So now if I go back to stat, back to edit, boom, this thing is now in order. Awesome. Now let's go ahead, let's take a look at what this looks like graphically. Right now, if I click the graph, you'll notice there's really nothing going on. Right? I have a horizontal blue line, really nothing else. So to change that, I need to go to stat plot. Stat plot is right up here, right above my y equals. So that's second, and then y equals. Then I have 3 different stat plots I can have. Right now, I'm going to go into plot 1, and yours is probably defaulted, turned off. Go ahead, let's turn that on. Then for type, we have a dot plot, kind of a line plot. We have a histogram. This is what we're going to want. We have 2 different types of box and whisker plots, one with an outlier, one without. We'll get into that a little bit later. So make sure we've selected our histogram over here. Then, our X list, what list are we using to pull values from? This will almost always default to be your L1. So if it's not, again, just hit second, and then above the 1 here, you have L1. Make sure that's pulling from the correct list. Frequency should automatically default to be 1. Leave it as 1. What that means is that every item in that list shows up exactly 1 time per entry. As you get later on into more in-depth stats analysis, you might see different times where we have different frequencies of different entries. But for now, we don't really care about that. So again, if I try taking a look at the graph, nothing's showing up. And that's because my zoom is kind of standardized right now. None of my entries are showing up. All my entries are kind of way over here on the graph. So what I need to do is change my window, because over on the left side, on the x-axis, this is my x-min. Over on the right, this is my x-max. Up here is my y-min. Down here is, or sorry, my y-max. Down here is my y-min. So what I need to do is change those values to kind of zoom in properly. Luckily, our calculator can kind of put us in the ballpark automatically. If I go to zoom right here, and option 9 is zoom stat. So if I just press 9, what that's going to do is it's going to customize my window for me so I get a histogram. Ooh, fancy. The only issue with this histogram, however, is the fact that, you know what, maybe it's not exactly how we would want it, because the calculator might not be getting the exact bin widths or class widths. Luckily, there's a fix. So if I go to my Windows settings right here, you'll notice I have my Xmin and Xmax, my Ymin and Ymax, so the smallest and biggest values for each axis. If I go to X scale, that is how much are we counting by along the x-axis. Well, for that example, we said our bin width was 10, so I'm going to put that in as my scale value. Now, if I go back to the graph, keep in mind it already has these zoom settings on it. Now what's happened is it has my bin width automatically set in there. Furthermore, I can see the exact values, even though they're not printed on this axis. If I press trace, it will show me this first bin is between 21 and 31. If I scooch over, we're between 31 and 41. If I scooch over, we're between 41 and 51. And this N number over here tells us how many entries fall into that bin. Right? So between 51 and 61, there were 4 entries in that bin. One thing I should make note of is if you look at the max for all of these, it's a less than symbol, a strictly less than. And that's because this number 61, if I scooch over, is going to show up again as a min. So the max of one bin is the min of the next one over. If you have 61 exactly, it has to fall into the bin on the right. And that's kind of why it's a strictly less than sign. So as we go through, we have all of our stat data into our calculator. We've changed the zoom. We then went into our window settings to change this scale. Remember, in window, this X scale, that's our bin width. And then all we have to do is take a look at the graph and trace along, and we have all of the different bars for our lovely little histogram. As always, if at any point you are stuck, something did not make sense, please do not hesitate to shoot me an email or ask a question in class, or if you're not one of my students, feel free to ask your teacher in class, and they will gladly help you out.